Welcome to Blue Collar Mystics, the under-the-hood approach to the depths of human consciousness. So many mysteries, so little time, so many big words. That's why we aim to take the mystical and make it practical, usable in your everyday life. And we want to hear from you. We want to hear your story. What happened when you started asking yourself the real questions? Like, who am I? What is this? Is it a hologram? Is this some kind of weird cosmic joke? Hey, these are the questions that we are trying to get to the bottom of as we explore the final rabbit hole together here as Blue Collar Mystics. Welcome to the show. I'm really excited. We got an awesome show tonight. I'm very, very excited and pleased to welcome someone that I actually met in the world of comedy, but she's got a very interesting background and just created a book that is in the realm of coaching. We talked a lot about coaching. It was after a comedy show. We got some pancakes, hanging out with other comics. We started talking about politics. We started talking about coaching and all kinds of other cool ideas. And we could probably have carried on that conversation for many more hours, but we were both freezing in the parking lot at IHOP. So I'm really ecstatic to bring on Heather Wylde. She just has her book that is we're going to talk a little bit about for sure. I'm going to talk a little bit about her background as well, just to kind of give some context. And the name of the book is What Every Entrepreneur Wishes They'd Known Before Hiring a Business Coach. We really connected on the whole coaching world and what's going on. This will be a very, very valuable conversation for anybody who is thinking about hiring a coach, anybody who's thinking about going into the world of entrepreneurship for themselves. If it's a podcast or a coaching offer or a yoga instructor, doesn't really matter. We're going to get to the raw truth of coaching, what it is, and all that great stuff. All right. So Heather, why don't you give us just a quick rundown of how you got into coaching, and then we'll maybe backtrack a little bit and give a little bit of background prior to that.
Okay. So I got into coaching. I have been into personal growth. I've been in therapy for like 10 years, and I was a sex worker. I worked as an escort and I loved it. I loved the adventure. I loved the money. I loved the orgasms. I was a happy little hooker. And then the industry changed and it got even more dangerous and less profitable and just ugh. And so I started looking for something else to do, but I had a lot of mindset blocks around being able to do something else. I had a criminal record. I was in recovery from drugs, I was like, I can't find another job. And so I ended up going to a career coach and I was like, look, this is what I do. This is what I love about it. I got to find something else to do. And she gave me some personality tests and some aptitude tests. And we realized that coaching would be a good fit. And so that was in 2009. I got my initial coach training through Coach U. And yeah, I've been coaching ever since, but it took me a long time to get my business off the ground, which is a huge part of my story.
Yeah, big reason I think why you wrote this book.
Yeah.
This book would have helped me a tremendous amount. And
Right?
yeah, which is fine. Hey, I'm not going to cry over spilt milk. That's not what we're here to do. Like I could look back. I was just saying this earlier. It's like I could look back and nitpick myself and want to cry over lost time or whatever. There's no point in that. That doesn't do anything for anybody. So we don't, obviously we don't want to do that. But what is awesome about what you've done is you are going to be able to shortcut and help so many people. Is there a specific thing or a couple things that you want to mention that kind of were the catalyst for you creating this book? It's putting these ideas. And when I read the bit you sent me, I was like, man, this is written so well. It was almost like you wrote it to me. You know, I was like, wow. And because I've spent good money after bad, I've bought good courses, I've bought not so good courses, but I mean, by now, I don't even want to know how many thousands of dollars I've spent in self-help and business coaching. And I've had some investments were worth it. Others I just got some great information out of, and I try to look at it that way, like, oh, well, I got a great piece of information or whatever. But a lot of them too were, you know, if I could go back, I would love to have that money or time back. So can you tell us a little bit about, you know, what inspired you to write this?
Yeah. So the first thing that was really difficult for me when I started investing in business coaching to learn social media marketing and sales in the coaching world was I was really uncomfortable with most of the ways that I was being taught to sell and market. So I kept investing, looking for a mentor that was more aligned with my values, and that most people like there's so many people online that tell you that they're teaching you sales and they're not. They're teaching you manipulation. They're just teaching you disgusting manipulation. And I couldn't be okay with that. Like even when I was an escort, like I was the ethical escort. Like my agencies didn't understand me, my friends didn't understand me. you know. And so when I came into this, I'm like, there's no way I'm going to use manipulation to sell to people that are coming to me for help. Like that is just gross, right? So that's part of it, is helping people to and then I was told, I was shamed, and I was told, well, your mindset's just bad. That's why, there's nothing wrong with the strategy. You just have a bad money mindset. You just have a bad success mindset. And so, I was trying to be a beginner mind, student mind. And I went and I worked on my success and my money mindset, and the strategies were still unethical. Right. So, and they just told me that's just sales. That's just how sales is. And I quit the industry a number of times because I just could not imagine selling that way. It was just gross. Right. The other thing behind writing the book is that there's this narrative in the coaching world that if you take a course or you work with a coach, whether it's a group program, one-to-one, whatever, and you don't get results, it's all your fault. It's like this sociopathic degree of accountability for the clients and absolutely no accountability for the coach, right? And there's a lot of shaming, like it's your fault. You weren't all in. You had a bad mindset. That's why you didn't get results. And so I spent quite a lot of money that I did not have. Like I eventually left the sex industry and I worked as an Uber driver for a while. I worked for Instacart, just
Right.
trying to like piece stuff together. And and like for every time I would make these thousands of dollars in investments and try to do what they were telling me to do, but there wasn't enough support to help me implement it well, because I kept investing in like these celebrity coaches and these big programs. And it was so disheartening. And like, I really internalized this. There's something wrong with me. If I can't make this work, there's something wrong with me. And so finally, like I started having more conversations with people in the coaching world, especially like 2019, 2020, and finding out I was not alone in this. Like everybody I've ever talked to has been burned by a coach or program at least once, with the exception, I think there's two people in my world. And so the book really is about letting people know that if you're not making it, it may not be your fault, right? Don't internalize that shame. Don't think that there's something wrong with you, because a lot of times it's people aren't good coaches, they aren't good teachers, or the container they sold you into was not appropriate for your stage of business or your type of business, right? And I want people to be able to invest and get a return on investment, not debt and regret.
I love that. I mean, yeah, I've definitely felt that and internalized it. You know, when I started my coaching business in 2020, because of the pandemic, we're really toward the end of 2020, it was like, people were telling me I wasn't charging enough, and I needed to like cold DM people. I mean, I already had a warm list of people that wanted to work with me, and I wanted to work with them. I didn't want to overcharge them to
Mhm.
work with me, but I had, I don't know. I just had a lot of internal resistance to a lot of the strategies that I was being taught. And then meanwhile, some dude's in a hammock on Instagram talking about how he's making 50 grand a month, and it's just so unrealistic. And also it just makes everyone in that industry look like a shyster whenever you're sitting on a fucking hammock in South America or whatever, being like, oh, well, just buy my program. I'll teach you how to make $20,000 a month. And it's like, I guess that's all well and good, dude. Some of us don't do this for the money. Some of us do it because we actually want to do the work, not just because we want to automate everything out. We actually want to connect with the people that we want to work with and see them grow and thrive and, and succeed, So yeah, I totally understand. And I definitely internalized a bunch of that, my coaching business that year. I think I it would have been 2021 that I really kind of pushed it off. And then that whole year, I didn't really do all that well. I did what, some people were claiming that they make in a month in the whole year, and I don't know if they're actually making that or not, but it 100% was my experience that it was my fault that I was doing something. And I can't tell you the amount of pain and just emotional turmoil that I was putting myself through writing blogs and creating content. Oh God, the fact that we call it content should definitely tell us something. But just putting all this stuff into the world, not to mention taking calls and, creating funnels. And it's like already the vernacular, dude, I don't like, you know what I'm saying? Like just the way that you're describing and talking about people like their numbers is already on the nose, very telling. So tell us a little bit about these celebrity coaching programs and these larger kind of containers that you experienced.
So these are things that are put on by people that are like national speakers and have books and, a lot of them have been in the social media game for like since it started. And the allure of them is that, or for me, and I think for a lot of people truly, is that you're getting access to this premium coach that, I know the big sales thing for one, and I'm sure this was a marketing tactic, was that it was $25,000 to work with her as a one-to-one client, but you could do a 6-month group program and only have to pay $6,000. So it looks like this incredible deal, right? And it feels safe because this person has this, their marketing is very well done and their branding and their photos and everything. And you look and you're like, oh, these people, this person, they've got it figured out. They know what they're doing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they're telling you like all these testimonials of, oh, this person, this client doubled their ROI just 2 weeks with them joining the program. And, or, this client, got to 10K months in 30 days, blah, blah, blah. What they're not telling you is that client they're marketing to brand new entrepreneurs, but that client they're talking about was a one-to-one client, not in this big group program, a one-to-one client that was already an established entrepreneur. So of course it was, if they just needed a few tweaks for them to double their ROI on the program, wouldn't take that much, right? But they're not being transparent about the foundation. And so I was a straight A student. I went to college on 2 academic scholarships. Like I'm fucking smart and I'm really good at learning and I'm not afraid of hard work. So I was like, bet we got this, and then to get in and not get the results. And the problem being, so many of the programs, the information looks really good when you're new, but when you go back and you've been doing this for, I've been studying this stuff for like 10 years now, and I go back and I'm like, this is garbage. The information looked impressive then. It wasn't actually that impressive. It wasn't that good. But I could open up my entire course suite on sales and put it out in the world. And maybe 1% of people who took my stuff, when my trainings and my workbooks and everything are excellent, right? They are excellent because I studied so many other people's stuff. I like really distilled it down to the stuff that actually works, right? But without me to be there to help them apply it to their business, I say, sales and marketing, learning sales and marketing is simplicated. It's simple to learn. It's complicated to apply effectively to your business. And so in these big programs, the information wasn't that good usually. And then even the stuff that was good, it was like, what, but how do I apply this? And so many people get caught in that trap. It looks safer to invest in somebody like that than it does a newer coach that doesn't have all the flash,
Mhm.
and doesn't have all the like really shiny testimonials. But when I finally stopped wasting money on those programs and worked with a newer coach that was like, it was, $1,000 a month. It was like $3,000 for 3 months. I started making high ticket sales within 5 months. Whereas I'd studied with these big name coaches in these huge programs for years and not gotten anywhere.
Yeah, it's funny. I mentioned even earlier, I'm taking a course right now from a guy who teaches public speaking and teaching really, it's really geared toward public speaking more so than comedy, but I'll take any edge that I can. But he won the
Mm,
humor speaking competition for Toastmasters in like 2001. And this guy, he's very aware, right? Like he's just not a naturally funny person. And
mm,
that's the person that I want to learn from. I don't want to learn from the person who's just hilarious and everything they say is so funny because they're not going to be able to be a good teacher. They're not going to be able to
mm.
unpack what it is that they've embedded into their subconscious mind that's made them good at what they do. Even when we teach something for long periods of time, I remember when I was in college, the professors would be frustrated with students because they had taught this stuff for so long that they were completely disconnected with what it would be like to come in from the ground floor. They didn't have that
Mhm.
perspective. And I think that's really an interesting point. I love the term simplicated. That's something that I've needed a word to to use for a long time because complicated and simple, like just because something is easy doesn't mean, or something simple doesn't mean it's easy. And even something complicated, that doesn't necessarily mean it's hard. It just means there's a lot of steps to the process. So,
Right.
one of those, you know, like when somebody puts it on paper, there was something else that you said in the book, where, if you're getting the freebies, you're like the freebie seeker and, and you're trying to get, and then people are giving you this like 44,000-foot view of what to do. And you're like, oh, I can do that. That's easy.
Yeah.
Right? No problem, right? It's very simple, but it's not easy. And there are processes within processes within processes that you have to set up based on those little bullet points that they're sharing so easily.
Yes. The way I describe it is that they'll give you, and the problem is that a lot of people, even in their paid programs, it's like this, but they'll say it's a five-step process, right? And so they're giving you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but in order for 1 and 2 to work, or everything to work, you need 1A, 1B, 1C, 1D, 2A, 2D, 2, and they're not good at explaining those micro steps that actually make the macro steps work, right? That's one part of it. The other part of it is that people try to make starting a business sound like it's paint by numbers. If you put the blue on all the 6 and if you put the red on all the 4s, then you're going to have a business. The truth is that it's like a really fucking messy science experiment where you are testing way too many hypotheses all at once, right? Especially when you're new. It's like, this is my hypothesis of who I want to work with. This is my hypothesis of the messaging that's going to attract those people. This is my hypothesis of the program I think they're going to want to buy, right? In a good science experiment, you're only testing one variable at once. But in business, especially in the beginning,
Ooh.
you are testing all these things at once. And that's why it's so important to have one-to-one coaching, honestly. And
Yeah.
a good one-to-one coach, right? Just because somebody charges a lot of money doesn't mean that they can help you. Just because they're making a lot of money doesn't mean they can help you. Just because all their clients are making a lot of money, and it's generally not all their clients, it's like maybe 5% is my guess. I don't have hard data on that, but um what they're doing to close sales might turn your stomach inside out, and you would never been able to do it, right? So you can work with them and maybe they are making $50,000 months, but what they're doing is so off the charts unaligned for you that you would never be able to do it. So It doesn't matter that they're charging $50,000 for you to work with them or how much money they're making. They're not going to be able to help you.
Yeah, that's absolutely was my experience too, you know, and whenever they drop that process on you and then throw you underneath the bus, like, why aren't you doing this, this, and this? Like literally sending cold messages and Facebook friending random strangers on the internet. Like, no, I'm not doing that. Like there's a lot of reasons why I'm not doing that, but but it's like you know, like that's just a terrible strategy. It's not, it can't work. There are good, now they have AIs that they'll sell you that
Yeah.
will message people for you, and these AIs are going to create a somehow going to push somebody to a call so that you can get them on a call, or get somebody else on a call who's not even responsible for what happens after the call, and they're just a good salesperson, so they'll sell you because they know these.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to backtrack a little bit into the world that you were into before this world, because I do sense
Sure.
that we do have a lot of similarity in our disposition, right? This is something that, you know, this came up before because I wanted to ask a little bit about this. I've never had anybody who's got a background in that world before on the show, so it's interesting to me. And then I thought, wow, she must be so street smart. She must be so savvy and have so much discretion about what's going on. Because like in this business world, you've got all these people who they know NLP triggers, and that's how they're selling you, and they're pushing you to your, you know, your pain point, and they're just pushing that in your face or whatever. Talk a little bit about, if you don't mind, what your disposition was like when you got into that world, because it very surprised me.
Yeah. Like I said, I was a straight A student, and I was incredibly book smart, incredibly book smart. I had no common sense. I was incredibly gullible. Um, and so when I got into sex work, I knew what I was getting into. Like I 100% knew. I mean, I thought I knew what I was getting into. I with sex work. Um, but I had no street smarts whatsoever. And honestly, I don't know how I survived like the first couple of years. I was a sex worker for 16 years. I don't know how I survived the first 2 years. Like I was so naive. And, not just like the clients themselves taking advantage of me, but like other escorts. Like I, I don't know how I survived. Um,
My gosh.
and it really was a crash course in learning. And I mean, I grew up in like a very small town, and we hardly ever left the small town. So I was so green. I was so green. And I had to, it was just a crash course in like criminality.
There's something very comic about that. Like there is
Oh
something
God.
insanely, like that blind spot is kind of beautiful, because it's like you've got all these people who are just jackals who can't wait to sink their teeth into you. And then you're in this world and you're like, I want to give people a good experience. They paid for
Yeah.
this time.
Yeah. And that was, so I definitely needed to wise up, but one thing I never lost, that as long as somebody was paying me well and they were treating me well, I would stay for the full hour. And the agencies I worked for, like they were used to girls like getting in, and if they stayed at all, if they didn't just run in and like grab the guy's wallet and run out, they were like in and out in like 30 minutes. And this was one of the things that was fascinating. Was that I learned that East Coast hoes, their MO was all about quantity. They were all about like seeing as many people as possible in one night and just like getting in, getting out. Whereas when I learned how to upsell, I learned it from a girl whose pimp was from the West Coast. She wasn't from the West Coast, but he was. And so her style of selling was West Coast. So West Coast hoes and pimps are all about, you get in with a guy and you post up for the entire fucking night if you can, and you just keep making him happy and having him give you money. And I was like, that makes much more sense. Right. But even the girls who had that style, they didn't care if the guy had a good time. They didn't care, but I was just like, this is a service position. And like, I really loved brightening people's day. And that was like my favorite thing. If I was, when I was leaving, if a guy was like, you know what, you really brightened my day, I was like, oh, it was like a sacred calling for me. Like, I loved it.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And yeah, like I said, I've never really had anybody to be able to share anything from that world. So it
What
surprised me because it's not what I expected. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, it's so funny. Like, so when I first did comedy, it was back in the 90s, and it was part of my sex workers' rights advocacy because I wanted people to meet a hooker that they weren't seeing on Cops. I wanted them to like see that sex workers are real people, and you know, all of that stuff. And one of my jokes was, some of you think that this is the first time you've ever, seen a sex worker. And I'm like, what do you think? There's a hookers only Kroger? Like, you see us, we're just not telling you what we do. And so you probably have spoken to a sex worker. They just don't talk about it because of the stigma.
Sure, sure. I can 100% understand that. I've been solicited a couple times, but, but I mean, do I just have Mark across my forehead or what? No, but
No, they just have a pimp at home that expects them to bring him his money. So they're gonna hit up everybody they can.
no, that's right. No, it's so fascinating. It lends itself so well to what you've put together in this book because like I said before, I would expect someone to just know all the tricks and the insides and the outs, but it's like if you are coming from this world where you're just like, or this perspective where you're like, I just want to be appreciated for what I do. I want to do a good job. I want people to value what I do. Then that is going to carry over into this other foray or revenue stream. And that puts you in a different mindset or a similar mindset to kind of like what I would think that people would be in. And I think you said like, oh, I'm coming into like something legal. So
Right.
people have to be, on the up and up, right?
Well, yeah, it was like I was very, 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 very naive, and then I became very, 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 very skeptical. And then when I found the coaching world, I was just like, "Oh, wow, like this is amazing." Because I say like therapy saved my life, personal growth made it worth living, right? So I had so many good experiences with coaches, and I was just like, "Oh, everybody that's a coach, is a good person. Everybody that is a coach is, they truly want to help people." And so when I got online and started seeing all the people marketing, their big programs and everything, and talking about these big, big pie in the sky testimonials, I was like, I think that sounds too good to be true. But they would gaslight you and say, well, if this sounds too good to be true, then you just have limiting beliefs. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of like narcissistic abuse mind fuckery that goes into a lot of the coaching world marketing, unfortunately. And it's particularly effective on trauma survivors, which, I know you guys are all shocked to hear this, but the ex escort actually has a lot of trauma. And so the very manipulative stuff that they do is very disruptive to your nervous system. And if you already have a disrupted nervous system, it really just scrambles your brain, right? So that's one of the ways I was able to like understand why I'm such an intelligent person, but I fell for so much bullshit. It was like it wasn't adult Heather falling for it. It was putting me in a trauma response, and I was defaulting to some crazy trauma survival thing that was apparently effective enough to keep me alive, but from my childhood, but not very effective when you're trying to build a business or have a functional, healthy adult life.
That's really powerful. Do you mind kind of talking a little bit about that and how you recognized that it was a trauma response and not just, some error that you were making? Because I feel like that can happen to a lot of people. It's probably happened to us all, right? Like it's not that just the coaching world does manipulative marketing
Yeah,
tactics. Every industry does manipulative marketing tactics, but the
sure.
coaching world picks that up. And then they're basically selling, advice. They're selling processes. They're selling time to work with people. So it looks like they're selling something invisible. It is invisible. It's not
Mhm.
like a package that arrives on your doorstep. But I know that we've all been influenced or manipulated by these trauma response tactics. I just think it would be neat to maybe just talk a little bit about that and what that looks like.
Yeah, thank you. So this is actually the second book that I've written. I published the first one in March of 2022, but it was sprawling. I didn't get help with it. It was kind of all over the place, and I was really fucking mad when I wrote it. So the tone, I was like, if somebody picks this up and they're a new entrepreneur, or they're, just thinking about being an entrepreneur, I could see them being like, nope, nope, never mind. Just back slowly away from that idea, which is not what I want at all. Like, I just want people to go into it with their eyes open, right? But in the process of writing that book, I was talking to, number one, I recognized that narcissists and sociopaths are very attracted to the guru lifestyle. It's unregulated. They get a lot of fawning fans. They get a lot of money. They get to control people. So, and because they have these big personalities, it supercharges their marketing, and they have no moral checks. So it's easy for them to market and sell and like do anything or say anything to get a sale because they can, right? So that's why so many of the people who are making great money, you go work with them and you can't learn their process, because it's not a process, it's narcissism. Right. So that was one of the things that I realized as I was writing the book. But the other thing, I was having a conversation with someone who was trained in NLP, and NLP, for anyone who doesn't know, is neuro linguistic programming. And it's a wonderful, wonderful transformative tool when it's used consensually to help someone have a transformation or have breakthroughs. When it's used in marketing, especially when I call it like the dark side of NLP, or like Sith. It's like you have to lean into your inner Sith to make this stuff work. It's really disgusting because it's kind of a cousin to hypnosis. And so they're using this non-consensually, and they're getting in people's heads, and it can look like, so for like webinars, if you ever watch a webinar, I call it the magic manipulative formula. So they dazzle you with a bunch of possibility and testimonials and case studies. They tell their story as if it's your story, so you feel a lot of empathic bond with them, and you feel like, oh, if it's possible for them, it's possible for me. Then they give you like 5 minutes out of an hour, if you're lucky, of actual content. For all the stuff they talked about, all the stuff they were going to teach you, they might spend like 5, possibly 10 minutes. And then they start going into more possibility, and then scarcity, and then FOMO, and then shame. If you don't do this, your dreams are not going to come true. And some of them will say that very overtly. Some of it's more a subtle, messaging, or, if you don't jump in, it's because you don't believe in yourself. And what this does is it creates kind of a neurochemical soup in your body and your brain, because they've brought up all these really intense emotions, and it has you completely off balance, right? You cannot make a good decision. You cannot contact and connect with your intuition when you are this bombarded, right? You're not in a neutral state. And then a lot of them will say, well, what does your gut say? You know, and it's not your gut, it's your fear. It's your scarcity that causes you to jump into this thing that you really can't afford, and that, probably isn't for you, right? So I was having this conversation with this person who was trained in NLP, and it just kind of occurred to me. I said, "Do you think these tactics work better on trauma survivors than on non-trauma survivors?" And she said, "Absolutely." And I thought about it, and so many people who are in the coaching and healing worlds are in it because we're on our own growth journey and healing journey, and we got so much out of it that now we want to give back to others. So you have like the perfect storm of like this marketing and sales that is making people millions and billions of dollars, but it's gross. It's really, really gross.
Yeah, it's advantageous, right? Like to wow. No, it's true. Like, and that I it's not even a joke really formed, but like I just years ago, it's like the self-help industry is like, you know, $11 billion a year industry because people are fucked up, you know? Like
Yeah.
that's just the truth of it. Like that's not even it's just very simple and straightforward, and it is absolutely a narcissist's you know,
Playground.
yeah, 100%. And that makes a lot of sense. That's why I see a lot of these people who definitely fit that description. And I don't think it's judgmental at all to call a spade. I think it just is what it is, you know. If
Yeah.
you think that you're better than somebody because you're not them or you're not like them, then that's a little bit different, right? That's getting into that judgmental world, but because of comparison. But to say a narcissist is a narcissist, a gaslighter is a gaslighter, a psychopath is a psychopath, a sociopath is a sociopath, that's just calling it what it is.
Yeah.
That's just
Yeah.
saying what the thing is. And yeah, that's crazy. So like, you know, again, it's not just one industry that does this kind of predatory type of sales. It's taught all over the place. And I've been on calls where they're like, close your eyes. Now imagine, you know, you're at dinner with that special person that, you know, and your friends are there. And like they tell you all this stuff and get you to visualize it, you know, and they're like, so, you know, you got it, but you only get this one time. You can't, you can't get this deal again if you don't. And it's like every webinar is the same. You know, I noticed the pattern pretty early on, you know, but they hook you so well. You want to get the information. It's like, I want to learn how to do this, but I don't want to do anything that is, you know, disgusting, gross, immoral, you know, taking advantage of someone else. That doesn't make me feel better. But if you have no soul, if you have no moral fiber, then it doesn't matter. That's why it's really easy for sociopaths and narcissists to succeed. There are no internal
And
barriers.
yeah, well, and they're also amazingly adept at rationalizing. And so for some of the more disgusting sales techniques, like I think overcoming objections is a disgusting technique. Um, I realized when I really geeked out and did a deep dive on sales so that I could start stomaching it, I realized that it's not objections. People just have concerns, right? And so I address concerns. I don't overcome objections. But one of the rationalizations, and I want to say it was Brendan Burchard that I learned or heard say this, was like, it's okay to overcome objections and, you know, essentially bully people. And I mean, I'm sure he didn't say it,
Paraphrasing.
but essentially it's okay to bully someone into buying your stuff because you know they need it. And I was like, no, no.
No, that's insane.
Uh,
That's insane.
yeah.
That's just
And
crazy.
but I mean, I've heard like similar, you know, I've heard, I'm trying to think of like other, but I've heard all types of rationalizations. And if you're somebody that's just not really self-aware, you know, or just not that bright, it sounds good, right? But if you're a thinker, if you're somebody that's like, wait a minute, it falls apart pretty quickly, right? But if you're somebody who just wants to latch onto it, you can latch onto it. And I think that happens with a lot of people. Some people that do disgusting things, like God help me, I have a woman that I worked with, and she's sweet as she can be, and she had a bro marketer come in and really be pushy, and she's somebody that doesn't know how to say no, feels very uncomfortable saying no, so she ended up signing up with this guy for like $5,000. I could have helped her so much more, but she signed up with this guy, and he's like bullying her into selling the way that he sells, you know, with like a slideshow and like refusing to let people get off the phone until they say yes and all this stuff. And I'm just like, like, no.
No, it's incredible what people will do and how they'll stoop in order to sell you something that you may or may not need. You know, it may not,
Right.
like you said, it may not be for you. So can you give us a couple of ideas to try to kind of discern if you are talking to someone who can be helpful to you?
Sure. So so in the book, I go through like how to analyze someone's profile, their marketing, and their sales process. And in each thing, there's like red flags and good signs, right? So good signs in people's marketing, they're not making over the top crazy claims. Like their client results and their personal story will be impressive, but it will sound believable, right? Giving a lot of context of like how their clients got those results or like what their foundation was before they started working with them. Those are really, really good signs. I've got to stop drinking soda water before I do interviews. I just burp and burp and burp. So
I do the
thank
same
you.
thing. I just mute myself and then.
Just, I mean, but you can see me like being like, you know. Anyway, so if they're educating in their content, that's a really good sign. They may income brag and they may income brag about their clients a little bit, if you're looking like at a business coach. But this everything sounds believable. It's like within the realm of possibility. You feel good after reading their content. It doesn't scare you. It doesn't put you into FOMO and scarcity. They have a sales process that actually feels nurturing. They offer sales calls. I have a huge problem with anybody who wants me to spend thousands of dollars with them, but will not get on a sales call with me. And that's become a trend recently with, coaches that are like, I don't do sales calls. And I'm like, well, you will never get my money. But on the sales calls, you get the feeling like anybody who's trying to sell you, whether they're a business coach, health coach, spiritual coach, relationship coach, whatever, they need to be asking you a lot of questions. You need to get the feeling that it's like a consultation. They are really trying to figure out what you need, not just asking you questions off of a script to get to the point that they can be like, "Hey, buy my $20,000 program."
Right.
Yeah. So
No,
that's just
no,
some.
that's
There's a
great.
there's a ton more in the book and so many red flags.
I'm sure. No, and the book is, you've got it on pre-sale right now, right? For what, 99 cents or something like that?
Pre-sale, 99 cents. I am not making a dime. I want to get this information out to as many people as possible. So I'm selling it for 99 cents because I want to get it on their bestseller list and ideally on that international bestseller list, because then Amazon will show it to more people and more people will get this information. And number one, people will become more empowered and savvy buyers so that any money that they're spending is much more likely to come back to them, right? And the world will be enriched by all these people actually getting their gifts out there. Number two, I want to make it really hard for these scammy people to sell. They're never going to change, but I can make it harder for them to make a living. And what I predict is going to happen though is that they are going to be the ones screaming to the rafters about ethical coaching within the next 6 months to the year.
Mm.
Some of the worst offenders are going to be like, yes, it is all about ethical marketing and sales. And it's going to be very interesting to watch them like try to pretzel themselves and still play the same games while preaching against it. It's going to be funny and gross, but I really predict that's going to happen.
I think you're probably right. No, it's so funny because when I was in that world, full time coaching and trying to put out content and do all of those things, it was so much I burned out. I could have probably burnt out twice and was very
Mhm,
close. But I burned out really hard. And,
mhm.
it was very frustrating because I saw all these people who were successful, or at least putting the
Look,
image forward that they were
yeah.
successful. Who knows how actually well they were doing.
Mhm.
And then I felt like the people who actually had the skills, you know, were busy working with their clients and may or may not have been able to be so flashy, be so good at marketing and sales
Mhm.
and all of that stuff. Myself, sort of, I'm putting myself into that camp because I feel like I do have skills and abilities to work with people. It's just my natural disposition. It's not anything that I think I'm like superior for or anything. It's just who I am on the Enneagram. I'm a type 2. I'm a community builder. I'm the helper. It's what I do. I was a producer in TV and film for years. And the reason why is because I can anticipate people's needs. I naturally know how to do it. It's and what's weird about it as a type 2 is we think everyone else has that same ability, but
Right.
we're not even aware. But but
I
but
don't know that I'm a type. I don't know what my Enneagram is, but now I'm really curious because that's definitely a part of my personality.
yeah, it's quite likely that it is. I mean, that disposition, everyone, what was cool about learning the Enneagram specifically for me was that, like, you always hear put yourself in somebody else's shoes. And what we usually do is we put ourselves in our own shoes in their position. It's
Right.
not that we're actually putting ourselves in their shoes because they have a different disposition than we do. A type 9 versus a type 7 versus a type 2, completely different view of the world and completely different desire of what they
Hmm.
want, what they're trying to get out. Like type 8, the challenger, like they will show you love in a different way. They have a completely different love language that,
Hmm.
they'll rib you. That's just how they show love.
Hmm.
My barber's a type 8. He'll be like, man, you're looking a little scruffy, man. You can come get my chair. You know what I mean? And and I love him. But that's but I understand that people talk and speak differently. And so
Hmm.
for me in that, coming from that position, that's just a natural position or that's just a natural, like, a natural coach would come from a type 2, a natural producer would come from a type 2, someone who, is understands what needs to happen and kind of has um, that sort of intuition about other people and what their needs may be. Now,
Hmm.
uh, to me, what was shocking was that the people because I know there's a lot of really talented people. There's a lot of people who are
Yeah.
very talented. There's psychics out there. There's people who are good at reading cards, at
Hmm.
all kinds of different skills and abilities abound. And it's actually amazing when you get out there and start to meet these people. They're like real life X-Men. I swear
Hmm.
to God, I've met some people who have abilities and skills that I didn't even know existed. And
Me
so,
too.
yeah, but they don't always have this other part of trying of
Hmm.
knowing how to market and knowing how to do sales. But I do hope that ethical sales becomes a trend. 100% is absolutely should be. Um, yeah, it's wild that it hasn't been up to now. I just like there was a crazy 2020 was just this crazy year where I think a lot of people got out there and started a coaching business and did this, you know, template that you're disassembling for us.
Yeah, a lot of coaches had their best quarter, best year ever in 2020 because they were selling certainty to terrified people,
Mm.
which that's still a thing, which is completely disgusting. And then you have other people. There's one like a huge name coach that had a huge ad campaign, went on for at least a couple of weeks, and I kept seeing it, and I was like, I want to punch this guy in the face. Where he was actually scaring people about the economy and saying, come to my free class, my free webinar, and we're going to show you, how you can like instantly have a successful business and stability. And I'm like, this guy should be shot. Like it's just terminated for the sake of the human race, right? But what's funny, you were talking about like the ethical sales. What's funny is that it actually converts 3 times better than the old school stuff. So the average coach, according to the International Coaching Federation, closes about 20% of their sales calls. And I guarantee you most of those people are using the old school pushy manipulative techniques. When I created my way of selling and started using it and then started teaching to my clients, we close on average 60% of our calls
Wow.
without being gross. So ethical actually works better. Like even if somebody isn't inclined to just kind of like be a human and do the right thing, it'll actually make you more money.
I think that's awesome. Can you talk a little bit about that, what the differences may be, and kind of, just a general overview of the ethical sales process?
Yeah, so with the sleazy sales, the training is so bad. They're just like, "Here, read this script," and then pitch to them and argue with them until they buy, right? That's basically it, right? And with ethical selling, I really focus on making sure the person is the right fit and really finding out what's their foundation. Like, where are they a beginner? Are they intermediate? Are they advanced? What are they wanting to get out of this? are their expectations reasonable? Because I will manage the fuck out of their expectations. Even though I don't do sleazy marketing, I know they see it from other people. And so I'm going to have a talk with them about, you're not going to make 10K your first month, right? So it's like really managing expectations. It's addressing concerns instead of overcoming objections. It's really treating somebody like a human being. And I don't like, I say I'm a sales coach because that's parlance that people understand, but I'm really like, I teach consultation style sales. And so I don't go into a conversation with the intent to pitch. I go into with the intent to see if we're a good match and then go from there.
I love that. Yeah. Like one of my mantras is I'm not a salesman, I'm a problem solver, you know?
Yeah.
And even in the industry that I work in now, which is not really coaching, I don't currently have any clients. Not to say that I wouldn't. Like every once in a while, I'll get an email and somebody want to work with me. I'm not going to just turn them away.
Right.
But you know, when I talk to somebody on the phone for a cleaning deal, I've got to figure out what is it that they really need, because like on the surface, yeah, it's cleaning, sure,
Right.
and tons of people can do that. But what is it a convenience issue? Is it a security issue? Is it a privacy issue? Do you feel uncomfortable with people coming into your house? You know, is it, based on a trust thing? You know, you feel like somebody's going to steal from you. There's a number of actual problems that arise from, this particular thing. And it's like, well, I want to be able to solve that problem and speak to whatever that is. And I think the people who are really successful in business figure that out, and then they can scale whatever that particular offer is. It's like, well, I can do this way so that there's not this, and this,
Right.
and then all of a sudden it's not just cleaning, or I'm a business coach, or I'm a, nurse coach, or whatever it winds up being. It's like, I am specifically, able to solve this list of problems and speak
Right.
directly to what those are.
Yeah. And that is a really good sign in somebody's marketing, that they're very specific about what they do and who they work with and what problems they solve. If they're just like, my program is for anybody who wants to make a lot of money. My program is for go-getters. My program is for people who are ambitious. Like run away.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And I even have a page. It's probably still, you could probably get to it, but when I'm working with people, it's like, here's who the program is for. Here's who it's not for. So if
Right.
if any of these bullet points hit you, then deuces, like, don't even book the call. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Well, a lot of people have that, but what they're putting is so
generic.
if you're in trauma response from other parts of their marketing and your brain really isn't working, you read it and it satisfies that analytical part of your brain while you're in trauma response to be like, oh, they told me who it was for and who it wasn't for. But when you go back in a really neutral state and you look at it, they're not really qualifying or disqualifying anybody. It's all very vague, disruptive language, just to
Right.
kind of check that box off, and your brain can be like, oh yeah, I read that, but it didn't mean anything.
It's like, this is for you if you want to be super rich and have freedom and not have to work a 9 to 5. And, just like these generic sort of statements that seem like they're qualifying, but they're actually not.
Right. Instead of being like, this is for you if you are a coach or healer that works on Facebook and you have this many followers and you're already making this amount of sales and you want to blah, blah, blah. Right. That's specific. But if they're just like, yeah, I'm going to teach you social media marketing, it's like, okay, which platform?
Right.
To start with, what stage of person are you really good at helping? What types of businesses can you help? Like, and those are, there's a whole list of 16 questions in the book for you to interview your coach. Don't just buy off a sales page, interview them, ask them questions.
And I want to say, yeah, that people can get that right off your link tree, can't they? The 16 questions.
Yes. So I am giving out there. So you can go to the link in my bio on Facebook and on Instagram, and you can get a 20-page excerpt. So it's even bigger than the one I gave you.
Yeah.
Here's a 20-page excerpt. And, I'm sorry, I just have to slip into like Kara for a moment.
No, it's great.
And then there's also a freebie where you can get the 16 questions, because a lot of people still, like, they haven't been burned bad enough, and so they don't really get why I'm doing all this, and I'm like, okay, read this and you'll get it. So there's a lot of free resources, and the book itself is just 99 cents. It's going to actually drop on Monday, but it will go ahead and download to your Kindle instantly if you go ahead and buy it now. So buy it, talk about it, reach out to me, let me know what you loved about it. I guess you can tell me what you hate about it, but I mean, I guess. But, like, seriously, the reason I named it that is because every single person I've shared this information with was like, "Oh my God, this would have saved me thousands of dollars if I had just known this, 2 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago."
Yeah, and just so everybody knows, I've got Heather's link in the description of this YouTube
Thank you.
video already. And so I'll put it on in Facebook too. And also what I'll do before I publish this tomorrow on the podcast feed is I'll cut out the little section where we were having some technical difficulties.
Where I
And
was on mushrooms.
yeah, I'll cut out the micro dose. We'll put that out as a reel.
That wasn't a microdose. That was a hero's journey.
That was a hero's journey dose.
Fuck.
But no, yeah, I will make those snips. I'll snip this on YouTube as well.
Just a tip.
Yeah, that's right. And then that way it'll flow on the RSS feed, and I'll cut that out tomorrow and publish it.
Thanks for everybody being here. Thanks for all the comments. Thanks for sticking with us through that crazy technical difficulty that nobody could hear but me.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Thanks to everybody. Y'all are amazing. Thanks for kicking it with us. Thanks for sticking through that. And like I said, for the replay, check out the replay. Check out Heather's link tree. It's got a lot of different links in there. You can get the book on a pre-sale for 99 cents. You can get a bunch of different freebies as well. You can just check those out, because the snippet that you sent me, which they can get a more in-depth snippet, it was phenomenal. Just that one little bit that you sent to me, I was like, oh my God, this is just so helpful. And so check it out. Whatever it is that you're in the market for, this definitely translates to. It's not just if you're doing coaching and entrepreneurship kind of stuff, but if whatever it is that you're looking into, then this will definitely help you. It will help you it'll help you see those red flags so that you don't buy something out of a trauma response when you didn't even know that's what was happening to you. Because I've definitely done it before. It's happened to me.
I had no idea. And the more I share that with people, and it's like, I'm all about like radical responsibility. I mean, we have to take responsibility for stuff. But when you go into a trauma response, like, it's really not the adult logical version of you making choices. And so then it becomes your responsibility to go heal that so that you're not not making those mistakes. But anyway, we could talk all night. It was so cool getting to know you a little bit better.
Yeah, same. I look forward to connecting. It's amazing to meet people who are in this world and who are in a general similar location. And we'll do some comedy again together. I'm going to start booking shows this week for next year. Really excited. So folks, come out and see some comedy if you're in the area. And and we'll maybe do something like this again. Maybe get like I'd like to do some more like round table type of stuff and get a couple of people to with different expertise and such the like. We have a great community here. I just want to shout out to everybody who hung out and chatted in the chat. Kevin, Jamie, I know you were a little late. Catch the replay, dude. It was really good. We had a couple of technical difficulties at the beginning. I will edit that out and put it up on the RSS feed tomorrow. Thanks so much, Christy Krinkle, for being here. Pete was here. We had a lot of amazing people in the chat. We appreciate all y'all, chiming in. Much love to everybody. I'm going to be back here next week with the Admiral Hits, and I've got some stand-up comedy dates coming up. I'll be in Nashville on Saturday. I'm all around. I'm in Athens this week, and then Nashville on Saturday, and then next week I'll be in Greenville. I already talked to my homie Don. He'll be at that show. That's at the Comedy Zone in Greenville next Wednesday. So lots of fun stuff going on, and we'll have a show coming up here soon with you as well, Heather. I look forward to it. Thank you so
Can
much
tell
for all
those
you're doing.
jokes.
You are yes, you are doing amazing work. Like I really appreciate what you're doing. It's awesome. It's got to if I love seeing people do stuff that is truly helpful and benefiting the community, because it's like you said earlier, it's like, we get into this industry because we want to help other people,
Right.
and it makes it a weird kind of mix, because you have people who want to take advantage of other people, and it makes it easier for them sometimes. But for those of us who really do want to see people grow, thrive, succeed, I think that's just a beautiful, awesome thing. I remember, I remember being in a room one time when somebody sent us like a testimonial, and someone said, "Oh, well, that just reminds me why I do this." And I was like, "Well, you know what? If you need to be reminded, I think you're probably not in the right industry." You're all focused on the money, dude. But yeah, absolutely. We want to lessen the suffering of those around us, and in fact, we want to hopefully help people thrive and do better, work on our mental states as well. And again, much love, everybody. I really appreciate y'all. Thanks for hanging out with us, and we will see you guys on the next one. Have a good one.
Bye.